Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Fegley, and I'm with the Fegley Law Firm. We specialize in employment and personal injury law. So tonight, I want to talk to you about sexual harassment. Let's just chase the elephant right out of the room. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's an uncomfortable subject, especially in mixed company. But if I was able to read your minds, I would bet that I would find several people in here who probably have experienced sexual harassment at some time during their work career, especially among women. A recent survey found that 82%, I believe 82% of the female American workers that were surveyed had experienced sexual harassment at some point in time, and 43% of men, because it's not just a female issue, although it is predominantly female. Most of all of the cases I believe that I've ever had involved male on female sexual harassment, but it's not just directed towards females. It's any type of gender-related harassment. And what I want to talk about tonight is exactly what constitutes sexual harassment, the kind of behaviors that can get us into trouble, and then what can we do? What in the workplace as employers, so that our workforces are trained and sensitive to the topic, and then as an employee, if you're working for an employer and something happens to you, then what can you do to minimize the chances of having this type of exposure and avoid it, take care of it, make sure it's corrected properly. I have 3 daughters, and 2 of them are going to be graduating from high school in a couple of weeks, going off to college, and before long they will be in their own careers. So this is just more than my practice of law. It's more than just a topical subject because of all of the news media that we've heard recently about big powerful guys like Harvey Weinstein and Matt Lauer and all of the trouble that they've gotten into. I want to make sure that whatever way I can to communicate that this is an important topic. I do not want my daughters going into their first jobs and looking forward to their careers and then having to run into something like this and being judged or being treated in a way that's going to affect their growth in their career. I want them to work based on their merits and their attitudes as people and not just based on gender. So what do we talk about when we talk about sexual harassment? What is harassment? Harassment is any conduct that is demeaning or puts somebody down in a protected class. Now, tonight we're talking about sexual harassment, so the protected class that we're focusing on is gender, but it can be racial, it can be religious, it can be anything as well. And harassment is offensive to a reasonable person. The law says that all of us should have at least some level of thick skin. So one remark, even a couple of remarks, is not going to lead to a legal case against your business. The problem is when it is not dealt with immediately and the employer lets it go, and we'll talk about exactly what a hostile work environment is in just a moment. But by ignoring the first few comments, if they are unwelcome, and the important word there is unwelcome, because we don't always know when it's unwelcome. The employees don't always speak up. They're not going to always say, hey, I feel uncomfortable. They may feel that they're going to be retaliated against. They may feel that, hey, I don't want to be the square peg in the round hole. I want to fit in with all my other coworkers. So they may not say anything even though they feel the discomfort from the conversation of the topic that's going on. So in the law, in the practice of law, we talk about 2 different types of harassment. First is what we call quid pro quo, or this for that, which means, hey, I want you to do something for me, and in exchange, either I'm going to make life good for you, or I'm going to make life very difficult for you. That is absolutely inappropriate, unlawful, illegal in the workplace. You should never condition anyone's job performance, raises, bonuses, the kind of office they get, or anything like that, on any type of acquiescence to sexual favors, or on the contrary, if they object, if they put you down, to punish them or to treat them poorly. I don't see this type of harassment very frequently anymore. I am sure it is still prevalent in a lot of corporate settings, but this type of behavior, fortunately, is not the most common that we see. What I see a lot more often is what we call the hostile work environment. Now, with the hostile work environment, it's probably the most abused term in the legal profession. I get frequent calls from people who call me up and they're saying that they work in a hostile work environment. Hostile work environment doesn't mean that you just have a obnoxious boss, or that the boss is picking on you and making you do things that you don't want to do, or watching you come in and hitting you if you're 2 minutes late. That is not the legal definition of a hostile work environment. Hostile work environment has to do with somebody who's directing that kind of behavior at you or the person because of their gender, again. And it's got to be either severe, can be a one-time, if it's severe enough, like a physical assault, that alone could create a hostile work environment. But more typically, it's pervasive. It's something that occurs over a period of time. Most of the situations that I see start out with a simple joke or simple comment about the person's appearance or dress, or a little joke or an article, sexual article left, and the guys think it's funny and they make comments about it around women, and then the behavior starts to accelerate. Or again, the person who feels the discomfort and is not comfortable in this situation does not appreciate it, does not speak up, and does not say that she feels uncomfortable. I just finished a case against the state of New Jersey in which my client was a very sweet but soft-spoken woman, and she was the only female in an all-male unit within the state of New Jersey. And because of that, they targeted her with what they thought were jokes, sexual jokes. They left pictures around. She would share with them, amazingly, stories of dates that she had had and some social experiences that she had had, and they took this information and turned it around to make fun of her in certain ways, again, kind of making pictures, characterizing some of these difficult experiences that she'd had with dates and things like that. And this behavior kept on, and despite all of the policies and procedures that the state of New Jersey had, the managers in this case did very little about it, and it got to a point where it altered her work environment. She literally had to take a medical leave of absence because she had such anxiety and depression develop from wondering, what's going to happen to me today? I'm coming into my work, and am I going to be subjected to this treatment again today? There are no excuses. You can't simply say, well, as they did in this case that I just mentioned, we were just kidding, we were just joking. And you can't say that the victim never complained. Well, it's her fault because she didn't say anything, she didn't speak up. That's the one thing that you have to be careful about, especially as employers, because somebody may be quiet and sitting there and maybe even giggling along, as my client was. They brought this up in her deposition. Oh, you were giggling along. Well, just because somebody's giggling along, again, doesn't mean it's unwelcome. You have to be careful in the company that you keep and the type of language and behavior that you engage in. And also, it does not have to be overtly sexual. Every act of sexual harassment doesn't have to involve words about sex or pictures about sex or things like that. If they are targeting the person, again, because of sex, because she was the only female in the unit, they were picking on her about her weight, for example. Weight itself is not, as the only female Type of behavior, even though it is not overtly sexual, when it's directed at somebody because of their sex, it's prohibited as well. And by the way, if any of you have any questions during my presentation, feel free to ask. I do enjoy more of an interactive type presentation than just me sitting up here talking all the time. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. So who can be the harasser? It doesn't have to just be coworkers or supervisors. You as an employer have a duty to also protect your workers from people who come into the office. It could be clients. That's especially touchy when you have a client who comes in and may be making inappropriate remarks or anything that could constitute harassment, because obviously you don't want to piss off a client, especially a good client, but nevertheless, you as an employer have the obligation to make sure that this conduct is not occurring in your workplace. It can be vendors too. The FedEx guy, the UPS guy, anybody that's coming into your office that would have the opportunity or is making remarks to any of your staff. Harassment is also not limited to just your physical workplace. If you have company outings, if you are sending your employees anywhere, trade shows and sales conventions and things like that have been notorious places for sexual harassment to occur. After the business of the day, often people go back to hotel rooms and restaurants and bars and lighten up a little bit with a little bit of alcohol, and the words and the conversation often go in inappropriate directions. So when you send your employees on trips like that, they have to know that they have to be as well behaved outside of your office as inside your office. So what types of behaviors are not appropriate? Well, again, there is no dictionary for inappropriate words and conduct that will definitely get you into trouble. And I think it really is a matter of common sense. You think to yourself, is this something that I should be saying, or is this something that I want said in my workplace in mixed company, in company where I don't know that there's that familiarity that will tolerate the kind of banter, the kind of give and take. We've all been there. I mean, I've worked in a lot of workplaces in my career, and we all know the kind of language that can get tossed around, especially in more male-type dominated environments. Plumbing, heating, the police, automotive especially, where men have predominantly been the larger part of the workforce. We all know about the conduct and the kind of conversation that can take place there. But as a business owner, you have to be mindful. I have a case recently come in, a female manager at a Mavis discount tire center. Okay, again, a predominantly male workforce. And in this particular case, she was not a how shall I say, a wallflower. She was not a princess in any event, in any stretch of the imagination. She participated in a lot of the conversation, but then it went too far. It went too far, and it stepped over the bounds to where one person was propositioning her for sexual acts and retaliating against her when she didn't go along. So that's the kind of thing that you have to watch out for. So, sexual jokes, remarks about a person's body or physical appearance. It's okay to say to someone, hey, you look really nice today. But the way you say it too can be different. Saying, hey, you look really nice today versus, hey, you look really hot, man, you are smoking. I mean, the way you say something can make a big difference as well. Distribution of pornographic materials, obviously not cool. Any unwelcome flirtation advances, it's no crime to ask somebody out. If they want to go out with you, go out, have a coffee, drink dinner, whatever. But if they say no, that's it. You don't ask them a second or third time or fourth time or start giving them a hard time because they don't want to go out with you. Inappropriate gestures, even nonverbal communication, the looking up and down with eyes. There's a lot that can be said without saying anything. So all of this kind of behavior are behaviors that could potentially become into a situation where it's a hostile work environment. If this type of repetitive behavior goes on, it can get you into trouble if it's not addressed. So, as employers, what do you do about it? How do you police human behavior in the workplace? It's not easy.
So, there's a cost for that.
Sure.